Finally, after months of speculation and wondering and rumors and this and that, and the other, the Pittsburgh Steelers know who their quarterback is going to be, and it is who we all expected it to be, but now it's finally official. Welcome into Bleav in Steelers, everybody. Jarrett Bailey with you. And yes, finally, what we've all been waiting for, the news that we've been waiting for since March. Aaron Rodgers is heading to Pittsburgh, and he will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. This according to Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, as well as Adam Schefter from ESPN. Rodgers is heading to Pittsburgh and will join the team for mandatory minicamp. And all of Pittsburgh, all of Steelers fans everywhere can breathe a sigh of relief knowing that we can finally stop talking about this in a way of what ifs and wondering what's going to happen. We finally officially know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the Steelers quarterback. And so what does this mean in the grand scheme of things for the Steelers? Well, it raises their floor and their ceiling compared to if Mason Rudolph was going to be the guy. Rodgers, while the Jets didn't have a great year last year, Aaron himself had a fine year for his standards, at least in terms of, was he the 48 touchdown and 5 interception guy that we saw back in 2020? No. But 28 touchdowns, 11 picks, especially in the final 5 to 6 weeks of the year, we saw a little bit of a spark of that old Aaron Rodgers in there. And so, yeah, the Steelers' floor and ceiling both go up now that he's the guy, or officially the guy. We've been speculating about this, like I said, for 3 months now since the new league year began, wondering when he was going to show up. Now he is officially going to be a Steeler. If you're watching this live on YouTube and you want to be part of the conversation, leave a comment. We'll make you part of the show. We'll make this as interactive as possible. If you're listening to this as a podcast, please be sure to leave a review. And if you're watching later on YouTube, leave a comment on how you feel about the signing of Aaron Rodgers going to Pittsburgh. You guys have known how I felt about this for a while. It makes sense. Aaron doesn't really have any other options. Every other team has their quarterback situation pretty much solidified for the 2025 season. And for Pittsburgh, if you're going to try to make one more run at this with another veteran guy, there's not exactly there wasn't a lot of other options. They could have brought back Justin Fields. They decided not to. The Jets gave him more money than what Pittsburgh was willing to give him, so he goes to the Jets. The stuff with Russell Wilson, I had, talked about it before. They didn't want to bring him back. Initially, it looked like he was going to be the guy to bring back. Stuff I was hearing at the NFL Combine certainly looked like, oh, man, Russell Wilson might be the guy who comes back. But the relationship between both sides seemed to be fractured after the leaks of tension between Russ and Arthur Smith got out. And a lot of that was believed to be by Russ's camp. And so there was a rift put between the team, or at least certain people on the team and in the front office, that couldn't be repaired, and Russell Wilson is now in New York with the Giants. And so that really only left one option if the Steelers were going to bring in, a proven veteran guy, and that was Aaron Rodgers. After the Jets signed Fields, Aaron Glenn, and the new regime in New York very clearly, we're ready to move on from Rodgers. And, we played this kind of cat and mouse thing for, the entirety of the offseason thus far, where it was all right. When's Aaron going to show up? Why isn't he there yet? He goes on McAfee and went on Rogan and, explained that people close to him were dealing with cancer. And obviously, we send well wishes to whoever those people are close to Aaron, and, hope that everything's okay. But fans were waiting, and you respect his privacy and whatnot. But, the entire thing, we got tired of talking about it. And it finally has come to an end. Aaron Rodgers is going to be the Steelers quarterback. And again, let me know what you think, both in the comments live as we're doing this on YouTube, or if you're watching it after the fact on YouTube, leave a comment. If you are listening as a podcast, leave a review, leave a comment, do all that fun stuff. Adonis says Rodgers might be better than Wilson, but it doesn't change the fact that Tomlin is a loser of a coach in person. Also, I really love your new look. I appreciate that, man. In terms of, Tomlin, I mean, I'm not going to attack Tomlin, the guy. He seems like a really, swell dude. As a coach, I mean, if you guys have followed my work for a little bit, you kind of know where I'm at on Tomlin. I think that they should have moved on. I do think that Rodgers is going to be better than what they got from Russell Wilson last year. Obviously, there were some very high peaks with Wilson, especially when he first came in. The Jets game, the Giants game, the Cincinnati game, especially when he topped 400 yards and the Steelers put up 44 points. But there were some obvious low points as well to the final month of the season where he just looked really bad. The offense looked horrible and just completely fell off a cliff. I don't think we're going to see Aaron play that poorly at all this season. I think that, there's something that comes with Aaron Rodgers in terms of, a certain moxie. And whatever you feel about him personally, whatever. Everybody has their own feelings about him, and I've said it plenty of times before. I'll say it again. I'm in the rare camp where I like Aaron. He's a little bit quirky, sure, but I don't know him as a person, and he seems like a fine. I'm not going to make judgments on a person because I might have different beliefs than them or things of that nature. But all in all, I don't have a problem with Aaron. And everybody might have their own thoughts because of a certain way that they feel about him. But in terms of on the field, at minimum, they're getting, at the absolute minimum, they're getting what they got last year. I think they're going to get better play than what they got last year. And again, Russ had good moments. It was very front-loaded, though. The first 4 games looked great. And then after that, things just really fell off. And I think if you can find a healthy balance between that, which I think Aaron Rodgers will give you, the Steelers will be probably a 10-win team, maybe an 11-win team, depending on how long they can sustain whatever they have, and maybe sneak into the postseason again. Or hell, maybe they don't sneak into the postseason. If they get 11 wins, that's a team that can be the number 5 seed in the AFC. And if they're the number 5 seed in the AFC, more than likely they're going to draw the winner of the AFC South. And whoever that is, you can beat them. I don't think they'll go much further than that, but they can go on the road and beat whoever wins the AFC South. Do I think that, and obviously this is before we see any sort of game and knowing what this team looks like, but right now, if I had to guess, do I think they can go to Kansas City and win? No. Can they go into Buffalo and win? I don't think so. We just saw what it looked like with Baltimore. Obviously, again, bunch of new players, new roster and whatnot. Do I think that they can go into Baltimore and win? Maybe. They've had success against Baltimore historically. So I wouldn't write them off if they were to go back to Baltimore, but I would prefer they don't have to. Do I think they can go into Cincinnati when they did it last year? But I do think that Cincinnati's still the better offense. And come January, that is what matters more. And a lot of people will disagree with me when it comes to that. Look at how the Steelers have fared in the playoffs over the last decade, in large part because offense is the more important side of the ball when it comes to January. They got beat to hell by the Chiefs, beat to hell by the Bills, just got beat to hell by the Ravens. All of the great teams with great offenses steamroll them. Doesn't matter how good their defense was in the regular season when their offense can't do anything. I think their offense will be better than what it was a year ago because all over the field right now, it's already, on paper, it's better. Rodgers is better than any quarterback they played last season. Metcalf is an upgrade over Pickens. We know that Calvin Austin can play a little bit. Robert Woods, I think, is an upgrade over Van Jefferson. We'll see with Roman Wilson. I'm not going to crown him or anything at this point. And so I think, and by the way, I think Caleb Johnson is going to be better than Najee Harris. So when it comes to, the pieces that are there right now, I think already from that standpoint, they're better. Defensively, better at CB2. I think Darius Slay is a huge upgrade over Dante Jackson. You still have Corey Trice in the rotation. Beanie Bishop was very up and down last year, but again, was an undrafted rookie, and I think another year of seasoning for him will certainly help. You add Brandon Eccles into that rotation as well. I don't think they're going to be in the tier of the great teams. I do think at their best, they can win a playoff game. And that might be, me being optimistic and trying to go into this with as positive an attitude as possible. Especially, I'm the guy who's kind of labeled as the pessimistic Steelers fan on Twitter. But I would rather give that a shot than be the guy who's just constantly being like, nah, they're going to suck, which I have been that guy for the last few years. Last year, I bought into it a little bit, and then by the time December came around, it was pretty evident how things were going to go. But with the current roster that they have, now the schedule's not easy. They play the AFC West and NFC North. That sucks. That's not going to be easy. So there's going to be, I'm sorry. Let me actually pull up the schedule real quick. I'm pretty sure it's the AFC. I know they play the NFC North. And I know that maybe it's the NFC East that they play. Let me get this pulled up here. They play the AFC East and the NFC North. So my apologies there. Got that backwards. So AFC East, NFC North. The NFC North games aren't going to be easy to win. But you look at Detroit, I think that's going to be a more winnable game than people think. They've lost a lot of pieces this offseason. They just had Frank Ragnow retire as well. I think Minnesota is going to be worse than what a lot of people are saying. Like roster-wise, sure, they got a lot of guys there, but there's a lot of assuming going on that J.J. McCarthy's just going to be good right off the bat, which I don't necessarily think is a smart assumption to make. Green Bay is not going to be an easy out by any means, but that game is at home. I Bleav that's a Sunday night game. Let me actually look at that real quick, too. We're really just doing a deep dive here. The Green Bay game, yes, Sunday night at home, which traditionally Sunday night, they're very good. They did lose to the Cowboys last year on Sunday night, but they beat the Jets on Sunday night. And so there's going to be games, obviously, where I'm not going to give them a snowball's chance in hell to win, to be perfectly frank with you. They host the Bills in week 14. They're going to lose that game. They're not going to beat Baltimore twice. For some reason, they seem to always split with Cleveland over the past 4 years, so they'll probably lose one of the Browns. Cincinnati, I don't think they're going to beat Cincinnati twice. But I think that they can beat Detroit. I think they can beat Minnesota. I think they can beat Chicago. New England seems to give them a lot of fits. I think they might lose to New England, but I think they'll beat Miami. I think they'll beat the Jets. I think they'll beat Seattle. Again, I think that too much nowadays when it comes to talking about teams, we worry too much about or we classify them either they're great or they're horrible. When it's not necessarily true. I think the Steelers fall somewhere in the middle, and they get much better now with Rodgers rather than having Mason Rudolph. And again, if you're watching live, go ahead and you want to be part of the conversation, leave a comment. Steel43 says same story, new season. When it comes to the quarterback, yeah, maybe. I mean, bringing in another veteran. Last year, they brought in two with Fields and Wilson. I think that Aaron is better than both of those guys. So that's my thoughts on it. And, I think that, again, I'm going into it with a more optimistic outlook. And again, I wanted Rodgers to be a Steeler. I never minced words with that. If they were serious about winning, or at least trying to win a playoff game, then he's the guy who makes the most sense. And I'll allow myself to be talked into maybe him having a Brett Favre with the Vikings type of year where, all right, he had a little bit of a down year with the Jets, goes to Minnesota in 2009, has a tremendous season. The Vikings go to the NFC Championship game. I don't think the Steelers will make it that far. But I do think that they can be a team that gets a wild card spot and potentially wins a playoff game as my light goes out. This is, like I said, an emergency pod, calls for emergency setups. So we got different monitors plugged in. We got lights plugged into different parts. So hold on. We're going to get this back up and running. No dead air for the podcast listeners. See if we maybe. There we go. That's kind of bright. This is on the fly. This is what happens in the emergency pods, everybody. You get to see how the hot dog's made. So, and by the way, if you're watching and you have a thought on what their record's going to be, you can leave that too. Or if you're watching after the fact, I'll scroll through the comments. And again, if you're listening as a podcast, I'm pretty sure you can give us a follow on Spotify. I think that's a new thing. Leave a review, though. And if you're watching on YouTube, like I said, let me know what your thoughts are on the signing of Aaron Rodgers. Adonis says, after 2020, I've lost all hope. As an 8th grader with high hopes, all got destroyed. Look, the 2020 season, yeah, I mean, I get that. That was a pretty big letdown. I don't know, man. I'm going to be optimistic as I can be, you know. Rodgers was the guy that I wanted. Well, I wanted Fields, first and foremost. I think it made sense to bring back Justin Fields. And not to reopen old wounds, but my reasoning for that was, okay, well, he's a younger guy. If you want to kind of have your cake and eat it too, you can figure out if he's the future by giving him a full year, being the unquestioned starter, and an offense that suits him. Figure out if you believe in him long-term. And if you don't, then draft a guy in 2026. So it was a very much like, all right, you know, we can be competitive with a guy who we were winning with. Figure out if we like him long-term. And if we don't, then whatever. We'll wish him well. He'll go somewhere else. And we'll draft a guy. And so now we look at the Aaron Rodgers thing, where it's very much, all right, this is a 1-year relationship. You know, you needed a place to go. We needed a quarterback. Traded for DK Metcalf. So, you got your number 1 target. Hopefully they bring in somebody else. And I don't know if the contract details of this have been revealed yet. How much money our boy's making. Not seeing anything. Yeah, nothing on the money yet. But whenever he was on McAfee, he said that he would play for $10 million. So maybe it's somewhere around there. That would be good. Again, that's fine. Perfectly fine. Now, how far they can go, as I've already said, I think that they can win a playoff game if they get the number 5 seed and play the AFC South. I don't think they're winning the division. I would love to be wrong. But with Aaron Rodgers, their ceiling automatically gets elevated. With Aaron Rodgers, their ceiling goes up. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, they should just play Mason Rudolph or they should just play Will Howard, and those people should be hit with a stick, respectfully speaking. You get Aaron Rodgers now with DK Metcalf, with Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren, Pat Freiermuth at tight end. Eventually, somebody else coming in, we assume. I mean, they've been rumored in terms of like trade talks with several different players, and we'll see who that other pass catcher ends up being. But right now, they're better than what they were a year ago. And what they were a year ago was a team who was 10-3 at one point and fell off a cliff. I think they can get to 10 wins again at minimum, maybe 11. And if they get to 11, I think that's a team that can be the 5 seed. And if they play Houston, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Indianapolis, whoever comes out of the AFC South, that's a game that they can go on the road and win. Could they go on the road and beat Baltimore? Sure. That's a team that they've had a lot of success against in division, but the last 2 times they've played, it hasn't been great. Obviously, we remember what both of those games looked like. Could they go on the road and beat Cincinnati? They did it last year. Sure. Do I think they can go on the road and beat Kansas City or Buffalo? Absolutely not. But there are teams that they can beat. And obviously this is before seeing any of them in preseason action or live game action. I hear you. But this is a team that's better than what they were a year ago and can maybe end this playoff drought of not winning a playoff game for 8 seasons. And that's why you bring in an Aaron Rodgers to do that. So we'll see, but I'm going to be optimistic about what the season holds. Keaton says Aaron Rodgers has convinced Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings to come out of retirement. I don't know who's going to be the number 2. It's not going to be either of them, obviously. Gabe Davis left the facility without a deal, so that knee must be more of a big deal than initially thought. Maybe they'll trade for somebody. Maybe it'll be Terry McLaurin. It won't be Terry McLaurin. The Commanders are going to pay Terry McLaurin. I do want to say that. I have zero doubts in my mind that they'll get that done. But, you look at Aaron does like veterans. It was very evident when Christian Watson was a rookie. Week 1 against Minnesota, Aaron throws a deep ball to Christian Watson. If he catches it, he walks into the end zone for like an 80-yard touchdown and he drops it, and Aaron is visibly pissed. Aaron likes veterans. So I won't be shocked at all if in the wake of this we see Amari Cooper or if we see Keenan Allen, proven guys who can be that number 2. And Keenan Allen last year, while the Bears, were in headlines for all the wrong reasons, Keenan Allen had 70 catches and 7 touchdowns with a rookie quarterback. And as a proven, good safety blanket, I think he's better suited as more of a big slot guy. But you can move him to the outside. He's still a guy who I'd have to go look at his snap counts again. But if I had to guess, he played the majority of the time on the boundary rather than in the slot. So he would be my pick, considering that Gabe Davis apparently isn't going to be the guy. But he would be my pick. Now, of course, if they can trade for somebody better than that, then of course we would like that. But I don't think, a Chris Olave is coming to Pittsburgh. If that were to happen, it would have already happened. When the rumors about, they called New Orleans about Chris Olave, and then those were quickly dispelled because the Saints, frankly, don't have interest in trading away Chris Olave. But maybe there's plenty of teams to think about here. Green Bay, Aaron's old team has plenty of receivers now. They just drafted 2 more when they already had 4 that they used consistently. Now, Christian Watson tore his ACL in Week 18 against Chicago, so he's going to be out for an undisclosed amount of time. Maybe they trade for Romeo Doubs. That's fine. I'm on board with that. Maybe Jaden Reed wants out. You can get Jaden Reed. Hey, that would be great too. So, there's teams that you can call. The Texans are another team. John Mechie was a guy that we talked about all last offseason. And he's still there, buried on the depth chart. He wouldn't necessarily move the needle too much, but he would be better than what they would currently have at number 2 boundary receiver. So there's things that you can do and trades that they can make. I don't know if it's going to be, big blockbuster ones. Anybody who says Tyreek Hill, no, no thanks. I don't care how fast he is or, how many touchdowns he'll score. He's not I don't want, keep him away. Bad guy. Now, the NFL did release that the trade deadline this year is November 4th. So they could very well make a move. I said it the other day when talking about Gabe Davis. If the Broncos are struggling, Courtland Sutton's on the final year of his deal. Let's say they're 2-6 at the deadline. I assume he would be traded, and the Steelers love Courtland Sutton. They reached out to Denver about him multiple times last year. Obviously, that didn't happen, and Courtland Sutton had a big year. But if the Broncos are struggling, or even if they're just 500, they know they're not going to give him another deal. If they were going to do that, they would have already done it. So maybe they trade for Courtland Sutton at the deadline. So I would look forward to around then rather than think a trade's coming right about now. And again, they certainly could for like a guy like John Mechie, who's not like a huge name, but is better than what they currently have. But there's plenty of moves that they can make, especially around the deadline. If the Raiders stink, maybe they call about Jacoby Myers. If Michael Penix just looks horrible, maybe they throw a flyer and say, hey, can we have Drake London? I don't think the Falcons would do that. But again, they're going to call and throw some darts at the board and see what sticks. Did Gabe Davis sign? No, he left the facility without a deal. So his that failed physical because of the knee must be a little bit more alarming than originally thought. But again, Aaron Rodgers finally ending this whole 3-month-long saga. He's going to be the Steelers quarterback. He's going to be there for mandatory minicamp. And the Steelers ceiling is certainly higher than what it was, an hour ago. So we'll see what happens. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, do all that YouTube stuff. Subscribe, leave a comment, letting me know your thoughts. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a review. If you're listening on Spotify, I'm pretty sure you can follow podcasts on Spotify now. So do that. But Aaron Rodgers is the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. And we finally know that. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. We will have much more throughout the offseason on Bleav in Steelers. So keep everything locked to this podcast. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, turn on notifications, do all that YouTube stuff, leave comments, share it around. Talk to you very, very soon on Bleav in Steelers. Take care till then.